Thank you, Jay. Good morning, everyone, and happy Fosnot Day. If you're from Pennsylvania or have any connection, you understand what that means. It is the first day before, or the day before Lent, so donuts abound, and they're special donuts. So, wish you could have one today in Pennsylvania, but know that we are thinking of all of you. I'd like to give a special thank you to all the people who helped plan this event. We will have a slide so that you can see all the people who participated in providing this 3-day event, as well as the Spotted Lanternfly 101 that happened in February. And we thank you. We know that this subject is um, very interesting for all of you, and we hope that the agenda you have found very intriguing, and we'll find full of information and things for you to think about and research updates and just general operations and communications information that will be very helpful to you. I would like to introduce our first speaker, who is Tony McCloskey. He works for Pennsylvania Department of Transportation. He's with the Bureau of Aviation. We found Tony a few months ago, and he is already becoming such a valuable partnership to the Department of Agriculture. Tony has helped in making connections with those in aviation that we did not know who they were before this. Agriculture is our business, but planes and plane carriers and all types of aircraft, I don't know much about. So thank goodness I have Tony now to assist me as we learn more. So I thought it would be great for Tony to provide information to the rest of you who might be needing to reach out to others in your state about the threat of spotted lanternfly and how departments of transportation might be able to assist. Tony has been with the Bureau of Aviation since 2015, and he is responsible for many of the aviation related programs. So Tony, if you're ready, I'm going to ask you to please come on and give your presentation. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dana. And looking at the audience, while we have over 300 participants, and I don't want to be the first presenter here that goes over the time allotted. Just to check here, is the presentation visible? Just looking at a check here.
It is, but it is in presenter mode, Tony.
Oh, presenter mode. So let me go
So
back
we can see
to
multiple slides at one time.
Swap display at the top, I believe.
Yeah, I will just
There we go.
There
okay.
you go.
Good. Excellent. Let me see here. All right, good deal. All right, so thanks again. It's been a working relationship and something that PennDOT's Bureau of Aviation will cherish for years to come, working with the Department of Agriculture. So a little bit about the Bureau of Aviation and where it resides within PennDOT, Pennsylvania Department of Transportation. And so Act 89 of 2013 created the multimodal deputy. And our leader, Deputy Secretary Jenny Lewis, has been doing a fantastic job. I've learned so much from her. She's engaged in terms of the Act 89, and what this legislation did is that it combined aviation, rail, freight, ports, and waterways, also with public transportation. The act also included the bicycle, pedestrian, and administration offices here, which supports the entire deputy. But the most important thing to take away here, it dedicated funding sources for non-highway and bridge assets. And so when you look at the Bureau of Aviation, we have 3 divisions: safety and licensing, engineering and planning, and flight operations. There's a little bit of statistics here about the Bureau in terms of the number of airports. So we have public airports. Actually, the number has decreased now by 1. We're at 121 as of this morning. Not going into the reasons why, what's happening there. We have 230 private airports and 284 private heliports. It's amazing the numbers there. Little statistics trivia, if you're ever on Jeopardy, okay? PA ranks 16th in the country in the number of public use aviation facilities. Based on the 2019 interim airport economic update, aviation provides an overall economic impact of $28.5 billion to the state of Pennsylvania. $28.5 billion. All right. It's all important here to educate what our mission and vision here is. Looking at the mission, we provide expertise and assistance in the development, promotion, the preservation of a safe, reliable, and state aviation system, partnership with the government, all right, state, local, the business arena, and also the local communities around those airports. Vision, we continue to grow as an industry leader in guiding and supporting a safe and compliant, reliable aviation system, again, with those same partners. All right, so let's take a look at the safety and licensing division. Again, the total number of licensed airports. We did the math real quick and a few slides ago, that's 636 licensed airports. So let's talk about the safety aspect here, then we'll talk about the licensing. And so now it's 121, okay? From a safety standpoint, we conduct annually the safety inspections for all our public airports and heliports. All right, we have a contract with the FAA, but most importantly here, we have regulations that define what the Bureau of Aviation's role is from safety inspections. All right, the private airports and heliports, we have over 500 of those. And so, from the safety inspection, the frequency is a little bit different. Every 5 years, we make sure that those hospital heliports are inspected. And then from a private side, outside those heliports, depending on what the workload is here with the public and the remaining private there, so every 7 to 10 years, we make sure that the private airports are inspected. Now, licensing here for the publics, their licensing continues unless for some reason they're not going to be serving as a public airport. And so the way it works here, if you're a privately used facility, airport and heliport, every 3 years, you need to get a new license through the Bureau of Aviation. It's all by state regulation. So just to share with you the various airfields that we have in the state of Pennsylvania, we have 16 commercial airports. So right there, Lancaster Airport, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, a little bit of east of Harrisburg, the capital, for those calling out of state. And then, of course, we have our public and private turf airports. Probably in your mind, you're thinking, wow, these airports that we're probably talking about are concrete pavements or asphalt or flexible pavements. And no, we have turf airports. And then, of course, looking at the private sector here for heliports, there's one in the back 40 of an individual. And so, again, we license those every 3 years. We inspect these, every 7 to 10 years. All right, a little bit more about inspection. Why and what do we do? All right, and so, like I said, the regulations in the state outline the inspections as various tiers of airports based on their size and the activity. The one thing here is we make sure that our airfields are safe. That's the #1 priority in the Bureau of Aviation. And so with that, we prioritize our investments and safety projects go first. One of the outreach that we do when we sit down with all our airport managers, we require them to have an accident prevention program. So important, because if there's an incident in their airfield, they know exactly how to respond and communicate effectively to the FAA and, of course, the NTSB. The Bureau reviews the airport's navigable airspace according to FAA standards and regulations. This is probably one of the major items that we do. And so objects such as trees, signs, buildings, new development, all right, they're identified as obstructing navigable airspace and are reviewed for their impact upon flight safety. Actions may be necessary to either remove, lower, or mitigate that obstruction hazard. All right, other inspection areas that the team does is looking at the markings for our runways and, of course, taxiways and aprons, and then lighting is also looked at, and these are all compared to what the FAA standards have. Other areas include the fueling equipment and emergency equipment. Of course, these are to the FAA standards and the National Fire Protection Agency standards. Other items that are inspected during any of these safety inspections for our facilities, public, private, we look at the pavement conditions, runways, taxiways, aprons. Are there cracks that need attention to, that we need to provide funding to and work with that airport manager? Nav aids, navigational aids. For those that are perhaps maybe a hobbyist in the aviation field, these are physical devices on the ground that aircrafts can detect and fly to. They allow the aircraft to descend to the runway at the most optimal angle. It allows the aircraft to align with the center of the airport's runway during landing. And another very important thing, it all comes back to safety, is looking at your hazard areas from respect to wildlife. All right, this slide here shows the partnerships here for safety and licensing, of course, with PennDOT, FAA, the airport manager, may involve their authority board, of course, the local government, their local jurisdiction. So each of us plays a role making sure that our airports and heliports are as safe as possible. Moving to engineering and planning division. We oversee the airport planning, review planning studies, provide the NEPA clearance. For those that are not sure what NEPA is there, it's your National Environmental Policy Act. It's environmental clearance before projects can move through design and construction, the final design. And so we need to make sure that is signed off. We developed our 4-year program funding plan. From the engineering side, we're responsible for the management of all airport development projects. We provide technical guidance to airports through all stages of project development and review project documentation, of course, for adherence to the FAA requirements, accuracy, and completion. This slide here is a snapshot of the funding that we have. There are 10 other states like Pennsylvania, total of 10, will be 9 other states, that we administer funding from the FAA Airport Improvement Program. That's about $10 to $15 million annually. And then there's a list of our state funding sources, the Aviation Development Program, subsidized from our Jet A fuel tax, just a type of fuel. We have the capital budget, which is $10 million. That's referred to as a transportation assistance program. We have multimodal transportation aviation funding. So if you go back to one of the first slides, I talked about Act 89, passed in 2013, that set aside funding, bam, it's exactly what we're looking at there, $6 million every year. And then from another fueling source, real estate tax reimbursement program. And so that's a snapshot of the federal and state. The one thing to keep in mind, just as on a highway side, from how highway projects are funded, in terms of my budget has decreased because of the less activity, the less fueling at the pump at our airports because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we're working through that. Next few slides show some of our capital investment projects. Schuylkill County Airport there, a hangar, you can see the dimensions there and your total cost, nearly $1 million. York Airport, which is south of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, mitigating obstructions on a runway there. You can see what the total funding cost was. And then also Pocono Mountains Municipal Airport. There was a runway extension of 5,001 feet. Looking what the linear footage that we could use federal funds for, 4,501 feet. And then of course the local funds for the 500 feet for the other part of the runway. So it gives you a snapshot of some of their capital investment projects that are moving forward. We do a whole wide plethora, and we make sure that our team communicates and works with those airports, on a frequent basis, whether monthly, quarterly, and we have our planning sessions that we make sure that our stakeholders are all there present to really move the airport forward. A few other slides here, flight operations, the third division here, we have an aircraft that was purchased in 2019, the 350i, used for transportation of government officials, seats 9 passengers, and cruises at 330 miles per hour. The big thing here is improving the quality of life. You can take a look at the radii there of the circles, 30 minutes from Harrisburg there, and then 60 minutes going outwards. And sure, indeed, if the cost benefit ratio works out based on the number of people flying, yes, we do go out of state, but there are some limitations for sure. All right, so let's get to the bread and butter here of why I'm here, spending time with you, talking a little bit about the Bureau of Aviation, and then also the collaboration with the Department of Ag. And so a lot of things have happened in the last 4 or 5 months. And so the Department of Agriculture, they conduct training for PennDOT employees who work or travel in and out of the quarantine counties. All right, after successful completion of the annual training, you receive a spotlight and fly permit that sets forth you have the authority, okay, to prevent, delay, and minimize the spread and dissemination of the spotted lanternfly. Now, focusing on PennDOT's own assets and field activities, the Department of Agriculture has been showcasing the efforts to educating other modes of transportation. That includes rail freight, passenger rail, public transportation, commercial trucking, or as we call it, ground transportation, and yes, now aviation. Spotted lanternfly awareness, so key. And so going back, I have the exact date here, Dana, October 18th, 2021, the Department of Agriculture reached out to the Bureau of Aviation regarding our efforts in educating our airports and heliports on spotted lanternfly awareness. So the question that was posed to me very professionally was, what are you doing for educating our constituents from the aviation side? And my response was, not a thing. I need help. And so you know, moving forward in a positive direction, and so we talked about some options on how to educate our airports. You know, we have commercial airports and we have our general aviation airports, and so working with one of our advocacy groups, okay, which is the Aviation Council of Pennsylvania. Each of the states have various advocacy groups, and so we partnered, meaning the Bureau of Aviation, with the Department of Agriculture and ACP in delivering a spotted lanternfly awareness webinar for airports on December 16th. And so now we have annual planning sessions during the summer. Every year we sit with those airports and we make sure, okay, are you planning and programming your top projects correctly? Maybe you're not. Safety's first, system preservation second, followed by economic development and multimodal types of projects. But with that, we have an opportunity at each of our meetings to showcase spotted lanternfly awareness. I'll be continuing to work with Dana and whatever they want me to do for that. Another opportunity here is that we have our state aviation conference, which is held every fall. And Dana, I'll share with you when that's going to be in September. It's going to be in Latrobe. Maybe there's an opportunity at that time where we can provide time for your staff to give a wrap-up presentation on spotted lanternfly, again, educating those. We'll work offline for that for sure. So with that, that summarizes my presentation. Let me go to if I can bring up here the Q&A. Let's see here. All right.
I'm not seeing any questions yet, Tony, in the Q&A, but
Okay.
yeah, I think for a lot of states, when we think of Department of Transportation, we're just not sure what all is covered in that. So your presentation today, I think, helped a lot, and certainly I learned a few things. I didn't realize we had quite so many airstrips. So thank you very much. I just am calculating how many more signs I'm going to need to get out there. And you and I have not talked about this, but maybe there's an opportunity for us to partner with your inspectors when they're doing some of the visits, purely as, you know, us providing some additional outreach support for you and your staff with some of the materials that we have, like our signs that are weatherproof. I'm sure that there are probably moments where they could be posted somewhere for the staff of the airport to see them. Thoughts on that?
Sure, Dana, thanks. And that sounds like an excellent opportunity, especially for some of those airports that have a lot of activity. And so in terms of where they post it, you know, most of them have so-called terminal. You're probably, you know, thinking of Dulles Airport or maybe Philly, Pittsburgh, you're thinking terminals. Well, these are a little bit smaller scaled because there's no scheduled air service there. But this is where the airport manager and some of the staff, if they do have staff, work. So there's opportunities there to post them there. Maybe in some of the hangar facilities, okay, that's an opportunity there where they store their aircraft and so forth. And so I think, you know, the way it works is that our schedule is variable depending on the weather, and so things do change. But for the most part, we probably have a good schedule set out 2 weeks in advance. Again, some things change, and so we can work offline, Dana, to share with you locations and anticipated time. And of course, we'll have the point of contacts here in the Bureau.
Great, Tony. Thank you. And
Sure.
we do have a question for you now.
Good.
Have any of your employees detected any evidence of spotted lanternfly after they received their training?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So if you look at the eastern part, whether Chester County, Lancaster County, up by Lehigh and some of the airfields, they've seen them flying around. Okay. And so when our inspectors, when they go out and they see what those obstructions are, so they set up a type of serving equipment called a transit, and here they are, and then things are just flying by them. And so, yeah, it's been visible, and it is a challenge. It is a challenge because there's so much out there, quantity, and here we are. It's a challenge because they're flying around and are a nuisance a little bit. So
Great. And I guess I will share the story of how you and I came to meet. I received word that a plane that had been staying at Reading Airport made its way to North Carolina, and it was actually an old World War II plane, and they found some spotted lanternfly on it, and that opened up a whole new realm for me because I have been dealing with air carriers and commercial airlines. But just can you give us a sense of how popular it is for these vintage planes, or uh, I don't know the correct term, but the ones that do the tricks, the aviation loops and put on the air shows for everybody to see. Do you have a sense of how many planes there are just based out of Pennsylvania for something like that?
yeah, so there are a few events in the state of Pennsylvania that have aviation history. There's a few that pop up, and so in terms of the number of aircraft there, you're looking at maybe 20 to maybe 50 aircraft, so very vintages throughout history. Latrobe Airport here in Pennsylvania, they have a magnificent event there, and what I can do is share with you. I'll send you some information about these, because that'll be an excellent opportunity to educate these pilots that are part of this contingent with the World War II types of aircrafts and ones later in aviation history. And so that Reading Airport now in Berks County, that's another one that they have an air show for sure. And so there's a few others in the state, but it's amazing because these aircrafts, these pilots, they're not so-called based in Pennsylvania. They're maybe based in the Southwest part of the country from a weather standpoint, but they go all over the country. And so here they are with these spotted lanternflies attaching to their cargo, whatever, and now they're onto another state. And so, yeah.
So, and exactly why the partnership that you and I have, every state needs to have, so that they can get that word out to visitors as well as those who are home based in a state. We do have a couple of comments that have been made. Don Egan with our DCNR Bureau of Forestry. So Don, thank you very much. He's letting us know that forestry notifies all the PA airfields regarding spongy moth and the spray program, so that he knows that signs can be posted. So I'll probably reach out to you, Don, so that you and I can get some, I can get some ideas from you, and then Tony and I can pass those along.
Yeah, thank you, Don.
Okay, and then we also have spotted lanternfly been found on modern aircraft? And I can tell you the answer to that is yes. We do have some air cargo planes that have made it to California. The spotted lanternfly have been dead, but they have made it on modern aircraft. Not really sure about reports of commercial airlines, although when they're very active, I would imagine that they could possibly get on it. It's a matter of do they survive the flight? Um, and then we have another. It would be good to know what smaller airports do not store their planes in closable hangars and have them instead with just tarps or open air hangars. That would be a good thing to know. Again, raising the awareness of having those open hangars. So, Tony, is that something that you keep track of?
Yeah,
Open
that's
hangars versus closed?
in terms of, and so, yeah, so you have your closed hangars. I think what we're looking at here, Dana, is the tie downs that like
Okay.
your smaller single engines in terms of, okay, well, that they're not going to pay that leasing fee to have it in a hangar because it could be quite expensive. So they'll have a tie down and they might keep it there, 11 months out of the year and then maybe move somewhere else or whatever their hobby is. And so we don't have a number of how many aircrafts have the tie downs. Uh, what we can do is that we would reach out to the airport managers. That's something that they can provide that information, but we do not track that.
Okay. Tony, you have so much to teach me. All these new words I have to learn. Tie downs versus I don't know. So please be patient with me as I learn.
Sure, sure.
um, so, do regional or smaller airfields represent a transportation risk for spotted lanternfly? Um, Tony, I don't know if you want to tackle that, but from my feeling, all pa- all airports, all highways, all rail lines, they're all pathways, and
Sure.
they are a risk for transporting spotted lanternfly.
Yeah. So if you look at your smaller fields versus your regional, the activity is going to be a little bit different. In terms of, okay, if you have quite a few operations in a day and then, the aircrafts are always moving, the question here is then they're going to be on the other hangars. They might be hanging out on some of the equipment that might not be used. So I think it goes across the board. I think all your airfields could be at risk.
Great. Steve Powell would like to know if any egg masses have been found on planes. Have any of your staff found any egg masses?
No, not that I know of, but I will,
Okay.
yeah, I'll bring that up with my staff.
And Steve, I don't believe I've heard of any egg masses on planes either. Um, but that is something I know that California looks for and inspects for in their aviation departments as they're doing their checks. So they are looked for. And then this is a very good question for you, Tony. What is the Bureau of Aviation's role with Pennsylvania Air National Guard or Army National Guard? Do you guys have a relationship there?
And we do have a relationship per se, and that relationship it depends on what the issue is in terms of the national airspace. There might be some changes into your various classes of airspace, and I'm not going to get into details based on what you're licensing and the aircraft you're using and how you're rated. There's various ratings for pilots. Dictates in terms of what airspace you're able to fly in. Okay, so there's been some changes proposed from the Air National Guard that we have commented on in terms of how it impacts airspace for our smaller airports or smaller general aviation airports. That's one great example. Another great example is through the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency. They call that as PEMA. Every state has emergency management agencies. And so there are exercises that are conducted, whether it's nuclear waste meltdown or some other national disaster. And so we have these tabletop exercises. The Air National Guard is there present, and we're right there working with them. So that's the kind of relationship that we do have. But good question. Good question.
Well, and maybe that is a way you might have someone that I can get to know with Air National Guard too, because that is another way we know we have troops moving in and out of Pennsylvania. Um, so maybe we can chat about that. Oh, people are adding to our to-do list, Tony. I don't
That's
know if you want to
okay.
keep going with this or not.
No, it's been a pleasure. Absolutely.
There's a couple of questions in the chat also. I don't know if you want to get to those.
Okay, thanks, Nancy. Let's see. Okay.
People, please use the Q&A rather than the chat. Thank you.
Yeah, what about military aircraft such as the
Okay.
Blue Angels and Thunderbirds? Are they being made aware of the risk? I don't know. I don't have a comment on that.
And again, you and I, Tony, are just kind of getting to know each other. So these are all things, good questions to ask
Sure.
so that we can come up with a plan to move forward with. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Um,
Next one
Is
is
there a
Go
reporting
ahead.
database for spotted lanternfly found? We do have a reporting database, and it is not
Mm.
specifically for pre-flight or destination aircraft. But all departments of agriculture are asking that anytime spotted lanternfly is found, that it is reported to their state Department of Agriculture.
So let me further extend that question, and then something that we can do moving forward here is I went over from our safety inspections, what we cover, all various assets, whether fuel farm, whether pavements and so forth. And so I believe there's an opportunity here that we can mitigate the form. Now the form is from FAA. And so in terms of, can we modify an FAA form? Probably not. And so I think my staff will have to sit down with you, Dana, to showcase what we do, and maybe there's an opportunity here to document if spotted lanternflies are found and where at. And so that's something that I'm open to entertaining. So
That'd be great, Tony, because we did work with trucking because they too have safety checks that they have to go through to satisfy federal agencies as well. And we were able to just add a line or two saying that they looked for spotted lanternfly. Again, we want very hard to not recreate or put another piece of paper for somebody to have to worry about. We want to work within the system that they have, making it easier for everybody to help us with spotted lanternfly. So all good questions.
yeah,
Thank you all for that. So I will just ask one more. Oh, we have another one. Okay. So do you or a sister agency handle commercial watercraft? What about inland barge traffic on the western side of the state in the Ohio River Valley?
all right. So what was the first? I'll talk about the barge traffic, but what was that first part? What type of
Do
aircraft?
you or a sister agency handle commercial watercraft?
Now, in terms of the actual aircrafts, whether water or land, I know exactly what you're talking about. In terms of our responsibility, that would be not our responsibility, that would be FAA's responsibility, because they look at certification of these aircrafts. And so that's how that would be handled. But looking at the barge traffic, so if you go back to earlier in my presentation about multimodal transportation, Act 89, we have ports and waterways. We have an excellent opportunity there to further engage with those ports. We have 3 ports in Pennsylvania: Erie, Pittsburgh, and Philly. And so we have the contacts. We have another division here, another bureau that actually handles that. And so great question.
Very good. Thank you.
Well, if there's no other questions there, I just want to thank you again, Dana. And of course, it goes back to Secretary Russell Redding for his outstanding leadership. And it's been a pleasure working with you, Dana, and Jay and other colleagues. This has been great.
Well, and Tony, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule. We truly appreciate this, and I'm sure that people have gotten some good information to go back to their states and work with their agencies as well. So thank you very much. Truly
You're welcome.
appreciated.
Enjoy the rest of the conference. It's going to be a success. I can't believe the number of participants. Have a good day.
Thanks, Tony. Take care.